Welcome back to the Idle Talk podcast. My name is Peyton, and I'm joined today, as always, by my best friend Jacob, and we are talking about episode 6 of Survivor 46. This episode is called Cancel Christmas, and if you have not seen this episode, I'd recommend watching that before listening to this episode. As always, that is your spoiler warning, because we're going to dive right in. Jacob, what did you think about this Mergatory episode?
I have mixed feelings about Merge. As I'm sure we'll talk more about this in more detail later. I just kind of have mixed feelings about how merging works in the new era as a whole. From a production standpoint, I really enjoyed the episode. I thought it was well edited, and I really liked who they chose to show in this episode, like who they chose to give the spotlight to. I really enjoyed. But yeah, just kind of my frustrations with the way the merge works in the new era tends to just kind of bleed into my enjoyment of this episode. But overall, I still was pleased with it. But whenever we dive into more specifics about the merge, we can talk about my qualms with the way they do the merge in the new era.
Yeah, I think honestly we should just probably go right into that. Or should we start with how the episode starts, which really is with Hunter and the idol? Do you want to start there and get that out of the way, and then we can move ourselves into Mergatory? Because I think that's going to be really the deeper discussion of the episode.
So in the last episode, I had posed the question, so what are they going to do? Because Hunter hasn't found the idol. They haven't lost an immunity challenge, so he hasn't met the prerequisites for finding the idol, which is they needed to lose a challenge. But I don't remember them ever saying the thing about either you lose a challenge or when you're merging, or I don't know what the exact terminology was. It was like when you're told to drop your buffs or whenever you're all on one beach, something like that.
Yes. I think they said when you're told to drop your buffs or something like that. Which
I can't remember
I guess they said that and we just didn't remember it, or
I don't remember it being said.
I think they did. I just don't remember. And yeah, I don't think it was all that important. They didn't focus on it because it was really more about losing. It was always about whenever you lose.
But these are getting into like really minute details that I just would love to be able to ask Jeff all these questions. But the thing that I wasn't sure about is, okay, so the idol on Siga Beach was already gone, which is crazy to think about because they don't know that the idol was gone. So it went back into play on Siga Beach. So someone could have gotten it, but no one did because no one knew that it went home in the first place.
I don't know if they put it back into play.
I'm just assuming that it did because
I seriously doubt they would have put it back into play knowing it was going to merge the next day. And the way they're doing it is this beware advantage and box challenge thing. But yes, theoretically it could have. Yes.
But the thing that confused me was, okay, so Hunter was the only one who needed to get his idol. But say the Siga person, say Siga hadn't lost, and Nami and Siga were both we were in merge situation. Nami and Siga had never lost, and Jem and Hunter were both trying to find their idols. It seems like Hunter would have a lot more time to try to find his idol than Jem would, because they have 10 minutes from when they're told to get their stuff to when they need to be on the boat going to Nami Beach. But unless they told Hunter, they planned it out to where they told Nami Beach 10 minutes before they were going to arrive. I don't know how those logistics play out.
Yeah, I think they coordinated it all because they know everything. And so, like, the whole thing was Hunter didn't have to jump through any hoops. All he had to do was go get this from a very public place, right?
Yeah.
He just had to solve a riddle and get it from the steps, basically in the center of camp.
I guess
Jem had to go do this whole crazy scavenger hunt with the machete and all this crap. And, Tiffany had to basically do, decoding hieroglyphics and run all over the island and all this crazy stuff. And he had to do basically nothing. So I think that they changed what they had to do, or this was their backup plan. So it was totally just because they were like, okay, we need to give him an opportunity to get the idol before they come over. And so this was either it was always the backup plan or they devised a backup plan before they arrived, because they were like, all right, after they get here, it's not like he can't get it. So this is the all or nothing moment. And whatever scavenger hunt they had was going to take too long to actually do. And so they planned it.
And also would just be like, so obvious.
Yeah.
Because they're all going to be in the middle of camp, and if he's running around with a machete measuring things.
Yeah, if it was something like that, yeah.
I didn't think about the fact that they could very well just have changed what the task was, and it wasn't necessarily what it was pre-planned.
Yeah, I think
so, that's a good
they
point.
pivoted, or that this was their backup. And so that's where I think Jeff would say this was their backup. I am skeptical as to whether or not it would actually have been the backup. I don't think that they would have thought that they actually thought through every single possible scenario in that detail. Like every single beach has all those scenarios, but I do think they plan out, okay, what happens if this, and they have a general idea, and then they have, the producers, and they have game makers and everyone there on set, and they're prepared. I mean, they don't have anything better to do while the survivor people, like the castaways, are sleeping. They can come up with something new, and they're like, okay, yeah, let's just go hide it right here in the middle of camp, while they're all pulled away off at confessionals or off at a challenge or whatever. We'll just go bury it.
Yeah.
Like, no problem. They can go print a clue. They definitely have a printer there. They're making this stuff all the time. That's super easy.
But yeah, so Hunter solves the riddle, gets the idol, which is awesome. I'm happy that he has an idol and that no one knows about it. It's like a really secret idol.
It was so funny. Just the moment of him trying to get this idol, and then Liz coming up and talking to him, and just that interaction was great. And then Soda and Venus just arguing in the background, and such an interesting moment, and the editing of all that was crazy. Chaos and anxiety.
I thought his little excuse to go away was funny, where he was like, I'm just gonna go vibe.
I'm just gonna go vibe.
I'm gonna go sit on the stairs and vibe.
and Soda's, you go vibe. Yeah, you go vibe. But he's still sitting in camp. It's not like he's wandering off. I don't think anyone would have thought anything of it. It wasn't suspicious, and they're already several days into the game. I don't think anyone was thinking idle at that point. He was just sitting on the steps. I don't think that it was that
especially.
I don't think he needed to
not with the
announce
merge
himself.
happening.
I don't think he needed to announce it. I don't know why he said, I'm going to go vibe. I think he could have just gone over there and sat down. But maybe I'm just overthinking it.
Especially with the merge happening, like right then, no one's thinking about someone trying to get an idol in the midst of that.
Yeah. But yeah, anyways, the reason to bring all this up is, Hunter now he has his idol, and his number one ally, his duo, has an extra vote. He's in this group of 4 alliance with Q and Tiff, who are definitely bringing in Kenzie, because those Yanu 3, I think they're going to stay very strong. Even though they're not like that tight with Kenzie, I think they're going to stay strong in a power position based off this episode. So I think they're going to have at least 5 there. And then if they can figure out what's up with Tem, I don't know. But so that they have some level of a power alliance going on, and he's just insane. We already knew he was insane at physical challenges, and then bro is just a puzzle god too, which we already knew he was good at puzzles, but absolutely insane at puzzles, turns out. I just don't know how long he actually lasts without going on the most historic challenge run in all of Survivor history.
And I hope he does.
I do too. I think that'd be iconic. There's no way, though. There's no way. Not. It seriously would take him putting on the best, like playing the best game in the history of Survivor to win. I think at this point.
he'd have to win every single immunity challenge until the end.
Because he's on a level, he's got like the physical ability, like the challenge ability of someone like Ozzy, or even like we've been watching the early seasons, like Colby was really great at these physical challenges. And even, Wigglesworth was really good in season 1. Obviously, it was season 1. It was different, but she was really good. But I think of Ozzy when I think of being like really great at physical challenges. But those were also kind of the endurance ones. We haven't really seen how he does on that side. But then even on puzzles, he's really, really good on the puzzle side of things. Like the players kind of like, I hate to bring up Aubrey Bracco. That's kind of a touchy subject after this episode, with Moriah. But, like those kind of players too. So I don't know why people, like why that hasn't been mentioned yet by anyone except for Venus. She's the only one that sees it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I understand that a lot of people, it's like meat shield. And she also recognizes it's meat shield, but it also is at some point they're gonna either try to get him out or he's gonna run away with the game. And I'm cool with him running away with the game. I think he'd be an awesome winner. I'm just wondering at what point do they wise up? Because there's no way that everyone there doesn't realize it,
Yeah.
It's gonna be interesting to see, because this next episode's the split tribal. And so I don't know what's going to happen there, because that's where some really crazy stuff can go down.
Yeah, split tribals are where someone can go home who you don't anticipate, and that's also where like threats can get eliminated early on. Yeah, where you can chop those heads off really fast. It is
the most important one for him to actually win immunity. Yeah, of any of the future ones, but he has to win.
If he feels threatened, he has an idol.
He does.
So
yeah, it puts him in a good spot.
So if he feels any sort of threat, he has a pretty big safety net right now. He just needs to win immunity. He can play an idol, and he has a shot in the dark. So
and he got rid of his disadvantage, which was his lost vote.
Yeah, that was really good. He basically it didn't even matter. It was like a unanimous vote, so his vote didn't even matter, and Tevin didn't have to use his extra vote to swing it either to make up for it.
Yeah. Him and Tevin are in a really good power spot. I think Q and Tiff are in a really good power spot. I'm interested to see how the dynamic of those four are going to go, because they're going to align really, really tight with one another. And
I think
I just don't know how that's going to work out.
I think what I'm most interested to see in the next episode is, so yes, they aligned with Hunter. They aligned with Nami to get Asiga out, but that was more to level the playing field. Yeah. So are they going to continue to stick with Hunter and Tevin? Because it seemed like they were honestly like bonding beyond just, hey, let's stick together for this vote and break up a Asiga number. It seemed like Q and Hunter and Tevin and Tiffany were like really on board with being aligned. Yeah. So I'm interested to know if they're going to actually stick together after this vote, or now that Asiga broken up, even though Moriah was the deserter, if they're going to actually stay together. Because I think they need to, if they recognize that the Asiga 5 is actually really, really tight and there's not going to be any deserters, I think they need to stay together.
Yeah, Asiga is actually more unified than it was before. So I think they're going to stay unified. But also, I mean, Q, like the Q and Tiffany and Tevin and Hunter, like 4, is 2/3 of that Journey group of 6, alliance that has been talked about now for a little while. And so, and honestly, like the whole Tim and Maria part of that alliance is total crap, because Tim is a big dummy and doesn't have any actual allies, because that was honestly the funniest part of this whole episode, was him telling Q, being like, yeah, Maria's my number 1, and
Maria was like, really?
Maria's
he said that?
That's kind of funny. Tim's maybe my number 3 like on a good day. She was like, why didn't he say Ben? And I was like, that's who I would have guessed too. Because I think Ben would have probably said Charlie and then Tim. So at least Tim's is number 2. But I think Tim is on the bottom of Sega.
Yeah. I just don't think his game sense is there.
No. That's why I don't see that alliance of 6. It's not a 6, it's a 4. But it's still the 4 most physical people in the whole game. And then I think it's a 4 plus 1 because you got Kinsey there. It's really interesting. I think that they're gonna stay together because they bond on like an actual deeper level than just get out Sega. And the Sega 5 are super tight in a way that is weirdly united.
They're 4 now.
4?
I forgot that Jim went home.
Oh, yeah.
So Jim and Moriah went home. So they're only 4 now.
Oh, no, they had 6.
No, they had 5 because Jim went home.
Okay, yes. Because it's Ben, Charlie.
Ben, Tim, Maria, and Charlie.
Yeah. Yes, so Sega 4.
Yeah.
Math.
But I mean, that's what Reba had last season, and they ran the game.
Yep.
So we'll see.
Cool. So we should move on now just to talking about probably just what is colloquially called Mergatory in general, which is the new structure in this new era of the Merge, which if you haven't seen seasons prior to Survivor, like post-season 40, so 41 and on, this new era, it's not the way that it historically has been done. And I guess I'm just going to start out by asking, what do you think now that, because you've seen more of the new era than even I have. This is the 3rd season of the new era that I've actually watched. What are your thoughts now that you've seen, because you've seen all of them, right?
Mm-hmm. So I've seen 41 through 46.
Yeah, so you've sat with it for a while. You've experienced the entirety of the new era of Survivor. What do you think of Mergatory? Has it grown on you at all?
Yeah.
Or do you still feel bleh? Like, just what do you think of it?
Like, what's coming to my mind is the 5 stages of grief, because mainly because Taylor Swift created 5 playlists today about the 5 stages of grief, because that's what the Torture Poets department is about. So I feel like I've gone through watching 41 through 46, and I feel like 46 is the first season where I've started to feel okay about a lot of the changes that have been made. Maybe that's in part due to I just really enjoy the cast this season, so my enjoyment of the cast offsets my disliking of a lot of the changes in the new era and the new format. So I feel like I'm in the acceptance phase of the 5 stages of grief. But I remember when the Mergatory stuff started happening in the early seasons of the new era, I was really not pleased with it. The big thing that I was really not pleased with that they've changed, and I hope they keep that different, is originally in the Mergatory, what would happen was, this was for 41 and 42. I don't remember if they did it for 43, and they definitely didn't do it for 44, but I think it was just 41 and 42. Originally what happened was they would draw rocks, split up, person who's left out would not have a choice to compete at all. I don't think they even chose a team. They were just left out. They whoever sat out just had to, they were just ultimately left out, and they were automatically not able to get immunity, and they would have to vote and be eligible for being voted out. That was what happened to the person who was left out. But what would happen to them is, I can't remember if they were just sent away at the very beginning or at the end of the challenge, but I think they were sent away at the end of the challenge. They were sent away to live on a beach on their own for the night, like an isolated beach.
Exile
and
Island
they'd have, and they'd have an hourglass, and Jeff came and visited them.
Yes, I've heard of this. Change history.
Yeah.
And
so they could break the hourglass, and if they broke the hourglass,
I've heard of this. Yeah, it was just the first 2 seasons.
Yeah, the people who won the challenge would now become vulnerable, and the people who lost would become immune. And I just really did not see the point of that whatsoever, especially with Jeff talking about how everything in the new era is earned. The people who lost didn't earn that. They didn't earn that at all. So I'm happy that has gone away. That was a good decision to do away with that.
Yeah, that's something he's talked about on Fire. And obviously, I haven't seen those 2 seasons, so I haven't seen that twist, but I've heard him talk about it in On Fire this season a couple of times where he's talked about it and how, he's owned up and basically said it didn't work. It was a mistake, and he's kind of learned from it, that it was an idea, and he thinks that the idea was there, and he thinks like it could have worked, but it just was not the right execution, and it never it just did not work, and he owns up and says it was a bad decision, and then and I respect that. But he's like, it didn't work.
Yeah, it's nice that he owned up to it. It admitted that it didn't work, because it really didn't for me.
It took him a while to own up to it, I think, though. He said it took him a while to come around on it.
And I think that's a good thing about people like us, like talking about what we like and don't like about Survivor, because Jeff listens. It may take him a while, but he does listen. But I think the thing that I also really disliked about it, talked about it, was I don't know if you know who won season 41, so I don't want to spoil it.
I think it's fine. Go ahead.
Okay.
Do spoiler warning for everyone else too. But
spoiler warning if you haven't seen.
I've heard the name of all the winners, so it's fine.
The girl who won, woman, but she was really young. She was like in her 20s. Yeah. So the girl who won, she was the one who was left out. Her name's Erica. She was the one who she was sent out. And then she like smashed this hourglass, turn back time, whatever. But she like used that as a leverage point in her plea to the jury to win. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a move you made, but like, it's really not that big of a deal. Anyone would have done that. Like anyone would have taken a chance for immunity for themselves. And I just didn't like how she used it as like this big turning point in her game, when like it felt like such an obvious decision that anyone would make.
What was the risk?
Exactly. There was no risk.
So I think the risk, my understanding of the risk was always like, now
people would just be
half
mad
the
at you.
People are pissed at you. Except the thing is that technically the minority of people are pissed at you. So that's where the math doesn't add up. And so that's the part that always felt weird, where it was like, okay, sure, you're making half the people mad, but what would have made it more of a difficult choice was if there were definitely like all your allies on the other side, that won, then, okay, that becomes a difficult decision. Do you send your entire tribe to the gulag? That becomes a tough decision where you're pretty much guaranteed one of your tribe mates is going home. That at the merge, I think they want that. That's something I would love to, maybe that's how we can transition out of this, is the idea of tribe lines blurring. They want tribe lines to break. And so that's where I think an idea like that could work, but not that execution of actually changing history, but finding some way to force players to actually break their tribal lines.
And I think that's something that Drawing Rocks doesn't allow for. Honestly, I think if you do a schoolyard pick, it has a more cause to blur tribal lines, because then you go for who I think will help me win this challenge and not who is on my tribe and I want to like either win together or lose together.
Well, do you think that you go solely off of who's strongest, but you probably also do pick people on your tribe, right? Because you're also kind of thinking about voting. You might want to take your number one with you, even if the strongest, just in case, so that way you can be voting with them. Or if someone has an idol, you might want to bring them to your side with you, or something like that. Like there's a lot of strategy. I do think that is more interesting than rocks in a scenario like this. I want to ask though, I'm curious. So you've said you've come around to acceptance on this. I personally was indifferent to Mergatory in 44 and 45. I didn't really have strong feelings about it. I prefer the old merge, but I didn't really care one way or the other with 44 and 45. With this season in particular, though, it felt to me as if the group of those that were safe had extra power in a way that wasn't there in 44 and 45. And I don't know if that's just editing or if that's just a matter of who was kind of on the chopping block and the nature of
I think it's probably
people who were
it
safe.
may feel that way. It probably feels that way because it ended up being 3 Nami and 3 Siga who were on the chopping block, so that's probably why it felt that way.
Yeah, it really, well, and I think really my biggest problem with Mergatory that it didn't bother me as much before, but where now I feel weird about it all, and I think it really came out, and maybe why I'm experiencing it now is particularly because of Venus, and I think maybe we can talk about Venus, I think, because she's really maybe the core focus of this episode. It is her moment where she finds out that it's her or Moriah, right? And they come to her and they say, hey, it's you or Moriah. Vote Mo or you're going home. And she says, I don't want to vote Mo. I want to get out an actual player. This is the time to do it, right? This is the largest tribal council you're ever going to have. This is one of our only chances. There's no individual immunity out there, right? That this is the time to do it. In any pre-New Era game of Survivor, Venus's reaction in that would have been totally normal. She wouldn't have been perceived as in the way that everybody perceived her, in that moment. But because of this New Era Mergatory, where half of the people that 7 of the people are safe, and there's only 6 people that can actually be voted for, and they are basically powerless. Even though they have a vote, they're literally at the mercy of 7 other people. It makes it where they can be told what to do. There's no reason that Moriah should have been the vote at this point in the game. There's no reason that Venus should have been even considered as the vote in this point in the game. Neither of them are legitimate threats that need to be targeted here, right? They are, now I do think they're threats, but they're not threats that you need to get out pre-merge, you need to get, when you're all getting on the same beach, this is the time where you target a hunter, you target a Q, you target, obviously they're safe, but you go after a big threat who you're not going to get later. And so if you're sitting there looking at the 6 that are available, you're looking at Charlie or Maria. And when you're looking at those, you're saying, hey, Siga is really unified. I just do not understand why they identified out of the Siga, Moriah was the biggest threat. That was so wild to me. I don't know how that happened.
I agree with that. I understand why Venus was the Nami vote, because I do think that she is the biggest threat out of who was available for Nami between her, Liz, and Soda. I don't think at this point in the game she's a bigger threat than Charlie or Maria. So if it's between one Nami and one Siga, it makes sense to me why Venus was the peg for Nami. I don't think Moriah was the correct peg for Siga, because I did not perceive Moriah as a threat. Maybe there's always more happening on the beach than we're seeing on the screen, but I do agree with Venus in that her wanting to shift the vote onto Charlie would have been the better move. But yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying, that it feels like the people who are immune are basically just calling the shots, when that's not really how it is.
They literally were calling the shot. That was the thing, that they sat at the feast and Yanu sat in the middle and they said, all right, guys, you two give us a name and you two give us a name. And then Hunter and Tevin said, okay, Venus. And then Siga said, no thanks. And they said, no, give us a name. And they said, no thanks. They said, no, give us a name. And they said, fine, Moriah. And they said, okay, Venus or Moriah. Now, debate. Who do we take? And obviously, they kind of like went back and forth, didn't want to give up their person. And then eventually they kind of settled on Moriah. And then they went and told everybody else and said, all right, the 7 of us have collectively decided that we are going to vote for, like that we are going to vote out Moriah and Venus is the backup. And because they have the majority and they were unanimous, like they did it. Like obviously things could have changed, but the fact that they came out of that with the decision and nothing changed, it felt super crazy and weird and very, like it was just, like that didn't feel like Survivor to me. It was just something about that felt scummy and just so weird. And it was also like this layer of, you got Tevin and Hunter and Q and Ben and Tim all sitting here at the table, and they're basically all 5 of the dudes in the game. Charlie's not there, but they're all sitting there and they're arguing about which of the women they're going to send home. It also had this very misogynistic feel to it and like power dynamic feel that's what Venus was pissed off about. And then Q got mad at her for calling them out on it, and then called her ungrateful and wanted to vote her out. And that also annoyed me. Like that sort of stuff just didn't feel like Survivor, you know? And so I really hope that Venus can kind of like keep her cool enough and not let this get to her. And because I think that there's a chance that she could like get really upset because there's reason to be upset. But if she can keep her composure, be cool, calm, and collected, and kind of slow her roll in her gameplay, I think that she is clearly playing on another strategic level from everyone else. And people know that. But if she can kind of tone it back and start actually forming a little bit more legitimate bonds, she's a real competitor. I don't think she can win, but I'm interested to see if she can work her way up from the bottom.
Yeah. I don't know if I would say she's on another strategic level than people.
I think so. I think she is. She's the only one there that's thinking beyond the next day. She seems to be the only one that can actually see who the real threats are. She's the only one focused on the end of the game.
I think her biggest issue is that she has very good strategic insight. I just think the way that she goes about trying to communicate those ideas comes across incorrectly. So I think she has good ideas. I just think she is not going about trying to communicate them the best way. And that could be in part due to people's perception of her. I think it goes both ways. It's one part their perception of her and one part the way she is choosing to come across.
Yeah, and perception's reality, right? Yeah. So it doesn't matter whether she's trying to come across a certain way or not. If people are going to perceive her as being antagonistic, then she's being antagonistic, you know? That it just kind of is what it is. That's how like people have been voted out for less. So
yeah,
people have been voted out for chewing leaves, you know, like that's Survivor. Honestly, I'm just hoping that we get to see more of Venus because she's so fun in her confessionals and the faces she was making at Tribal and her answers and everything. Like, I'm not confident that we're going to get very many more episodes of Venus because I think people are really scared of her. But man, she really, it's cliche at this point, but it is just so Parvati and I love it. And she's just doesn't care what anyone else thinks, and it's clear she's really smart and she's going to do her own thing, and I love that. She's not going to be a follower to other people, which I think scares mostly the men, but it scares all the people who want to tell other people what to do, which I like. It's nice to have unique players, because a lot of times it feels like we kind of get these archetypes who are all kind of the same season to season. And this season, it's fun because we have a cast that feels very different for the most part from players we've had before.
Yeah, I think I'm interested for next episode to see what the perception of her is moving forward, because I think judging by how people were talking about her this past episode, it doesn't seem like she's going to be sticking around very long. But I guess we'll see what if perception changes or if she's able to work her way into something. I think it just depends on how people continue to see her.
I will say she has a good shot with the split tribal. That makes things really interesting for her, because it's not the same dynamic as this one. You go from the biggest tribal of the entire season to two really small tribals, and you can't predict what the dynamics are going to be within those. And it's just going to be if she gets lucky with who's in that tribal, because that's going to make or break everything. Because, it's just going to depend on who she's sitting at tribal council with.
Yeah. The split tribal is really going to shake things up next episode, so it's going to be really interesting to see who gets put where. But I think that's also just another contributing factor to Survivor just being so much about luck. And I personally would rather luck be taken out of Survivor as much as possible, where possible. But I think that's just the name of the game.
This goes back to where we said, Jeff, listen to us, man. You got to go to 3 tribes, and then you go to 2. And we can just skip this whole pre-mergatory and split tribal thing, right? You do these 3 votes at 2 with 2 tribes, and then you merge at 10. It works. The math is there, and you just go straight to jury. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I guess the thing that I just don't understand about why Mergatory is done is, like, Jeff, the point that he keeps reiterating is you have to earn everything in the new era. I don't understand what the point of half the people earning the merge and then you vote someone out and then the other half earns the merge. It doesn't really follow the logic. And the thing that Jeff also always says is production does everything for a reason. And this is just one of those things that I would love to just be able to sit down with Jeff and pick his brain and try to understand why they're doing the things they're doing. Because at the end of the day, all the things they do are trying to make the best players come out and to shake up dynamics. So
I think it kind of is trying to make the best players come out. At the end of the day, I think they're trying to make the best television, right?
Yeah. But I mean, in my opinion, this does not make the best television. It's not the most enjoyable thing to watch, in my personal opinion.
I think it's not the most enjoyable thing for us to watch. But I think you also have to think about the fact that this, like, they're making this for a cable television network still. And it's going on streaming as well. But they're making this for CBS, and your average person watches for drama. It's reality TV. And so they want to put players in situations that are going to create drama, that are unknown, that have tension, that, are unfamiliar. They want to, they want chaos, controlled chaos. And so I think that's probably a big part of it. And so it's not entertaining to us as much because, one, we're familiar with old Survivor that we had for 40 seasons. and we're accustomed to and we think is better. But also, we're just looking at it through a different lens. It's kind of the thing, like when I watch movies, it's kind of the idea of like consuming something versus like appreciating something, like consuming media versus watching it as like art or something, like with like a movie or music or anything like that. When we're watching Survivor, like we're fans of it and we really enjoy it. We're watching it and we're thinking about the production of it, and we're watching it, we're thinking, oh man, how did they design this challenge? How did they logistically do all this? Your average person's just consuming it. They're not thinking about any of that stuff. They are not thinking about the strategy that goes into this. They're not thinking, what would I do in this scenario? They're just thinking, girl got voted out. Oh no. That's my like normal person watching TV after work, like interpretation of like just consumer brain. Because I mean, I'll do that sometimes with just like random shows that I just want to consume, you know, like if I throw on Chopped or something on TV. I don't watch Chopped anymore, but like if I like used to just throw on Chopped, like I'm not thinking too deeply about this stuff. Like, oh man, what would I do with these ingredients? Like, I don't know how I would make dessert with Cheetos. I'm not going to try to think how I'd make dessert with Cheetos. I'm just going to watch. I'm interested to see how they're going to make dessert with Cheetos.
My favorite part of Chopped, this is so off topic.
No, go for it.
I used to love watching Chopped. But my favorite part about Chopped would be like when they would give them the ingredients and they would give them like, I don't know, like black licorice and then like canned fish or something like that. And then they do the tasting. They're like, you know, your dish is great, but the black licorice just really does not go with the canned fish.
Yeah.
Well, you're the one who put them in there. Like that always gagged me. I was like, what are you talking about? Why are you complaining about these things not tasting good together when you deliberately put these things in the basket that wouldn't taste good together?
Yeah. Or when it tastes too much like one of the ingredients that they gave.
Yeah.
It's a little bit too fishy.
Or not enough.
Yeah. Well, not enough I get, because they're trying to mask an ingredient that they don't like. And it's...
I know, but they give bonus points when you can make one of the ingredients shine and taste good and blend together. And then there are times when people try and mask it and then they get upset. They're like, I can't taste the fish in your ice cream.
Yeah.
Like, sorry. Didn't want you to have salty fish ice cream.
But that's what they wanted. That was why they put fish in the basket. Yeah. No. Man, we need to watch... Have you ever seen Cutthroat Kitchen? This is also off topic, but... we need to watch an episode of Cutthroat Kitchen. Cutthroat Kitchen is like Chopped, but on steroids. It's crazy. It's next level insane version of Chopped. Pretty nuts.
The Food Network show I always thought was funny was Worst Cooks in America.
Yeah. Should we make a podcast about random Food Network shows? Or
my favorite,
we just drop a random episode of this just for a review of every season of Worst Cooks in America.
My favorite like chef to watch was always the Pioneer Woman.
That's so on brand for you. If you would have asked me to pick, I would have said that or like Betty Crocker. You give me Betty Crocker fanboy vibes. Cool. Okay, that was quite the tangent. Let's circle all the way back here before we end. We talked a lot about Venus. Moriah was voted out. We've already established we don't think she was a threat. I didn't have a good way to tie Food Network into Moriah, but it's all right.
They ate her up.
They did. She received a vote from everyone, including herself. Because Liz
how'd she vote for her? How'd she vote for herself if she played her shot in the if for one, you're not allowed to vote for yourself, and two, she played her shot in the dark.
Yeah, so she got a vote from everyone except for Charlie.
Let me go pull up the tweet that I sent you.
Yeah.
Did you read that tweet?
I had seen the tweet by Venus about it.
So Survivor Twitter was honestly like, it was popping off.
Venus in particular. Venus
was tweeting like every 5 minutes.
I don't know if she's breaking her NDA, but if she
seems like she is.
If she wants to come on our podcast, we should just see like, yo, you want to come on our podcast? It seems like you've already violated your NDA once.
Yeah.
You want to come on the podcast?
and one of our co-hosts is obsessed with you.
Please come on the podcast.
Yeah, everyone voted for Venus
CBS
except
won't
for
reply
Charlie.
to our emails.
Yeah, they're ghosting us. CBS, you're on my list. I was going to say I was going to call out.
No, do not call them out.
I'm not going to say.
Don't call them out. We're trying. We've got interviews lined up. We just need help.
Hunter has literally messaged me back on Instagram. We have been in contact with a player. I have gotten a response, and he wanted to be on our podcast
forever ago.
But he had to
preseason.
Yeah, this was before the season even started. I kind of want to I should message him again and be like, hey, this person from CBS is like ghosting us. We've emailed them multiple times and they won't respond to us. When does your NDA end? And when it ends, would you still want to come on our podcast? Because I'm assuming it either ends A, when they get voted out, or B, when the season ends. I'm assuming there's probably two different clauses. Like you can talk about certain stuff after you get voted out, and then you can talk about everything after the season ends.
That's my assumption as well.
So after this, I'll message Hunter. I'll send him a message. But yeah, so we're in limbo trying to get interviews with players. But back to the vote. Charlie was the only one who voted for Venus, and his reasoning was, he tweeted this. He said, reasons I voted for Venus. Number 1, everyone told me she was saying my name. Number 2, I knew Moriah, was playing her shot in the dark way before Venus. Who told me? Mo did. So, to protect myself and Maria from a ricochet vote, what happened to Jay in the previous season with Caleb successfully getting his shot in the dark, I voted for the person saying my name up and down the beach. That's it. So that was Charlie's justification for voting for Venus, which honestly I think is pretty solid justification. Granted, him saying like with what happened with Jay, it's pretty smart that he saw the potential because he didn't know what happened to Jay. He hadn't seen that. So that's pretty smart of him for being able to recognize that potential up front. So honestly, not a bad move on him. If I honestly think that was a pretty good move, trying to at least putting one vote on her just in case.
Yeah, I don't know why nobody, like, I wasn't surprised that she had a vote thrown on her. That seems like the normal strategy. I feel like you would also do that just in case Moriah happens to have an idol. Like, nobody
I'm
talked
surprised
about
there was
that.
no splitting at all. There was no split.
The fact that nobody thought she had an idol is crazy. Like, no one knew Jem had the idol. Did they just all assume that no one found the... Like, they knew the Beware advantage was moved. Are they just... That's something that the fact that they were all just totally willing to vote every single person on Moriah is wild.
Yeah, usually it's split. There's usually never a dog pile.
I kind of wish Moriah had the idol. That would have been so
but then your girl would have gone home.
I know. But it would have been so juicy for her to receive every vote. The thing is, she would have told Siga, and it would have been a totally different game. Like, none of that would have happened, I don't think.
Yeah.
It
would have had another Wentworth moment.
Yeah. Anyways, so that happens, right? She receives all the votes. Clearly, everyone thinks that she's a threat. This is why I'm circling back to my original question. We keep going on little tangents. But do you think Moriah was actually a threat to win the game? And what do you think led people to this conclusion? Because on one hand, she's at the bottom of Siga. But on the other hand, Siga told her to lie to everyone, and she went along with it. And that's on her.
Yeah, that was not a smart move. If I was her, I would have been like, screw y'all. I am going to tell all these people that y'all flipped on me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then get one of them out.
Yeah, it is totally, at the beginning of the episode, when they were hopping on the boat, she was talking about, this is the time to go make new relationships and tell everyone that, I'm jumping ship, and then she never did. And so it was on, like, her going home, I think, is 100% on her.
Yeah. And her spilling the beans at Tribal was just too little too late.
Yeah.
Because then at that point, she had already been lying to their faces for the entire day.
Yep.
So they're upset with her for lying. Siga is upset with her for spilling and saying all that. So you have like two sides who are upset at you, and you just end up going home. I think if she would have been upfront from the very start that she was in the wrong side of the vote, I don't think she would have gone home. But
No.
To answer your question, why do I think they perceived her as a threat? I think the only explanation is that they just thought that she had a lot of game sense and a lot of game knowledge. That's the only reason I can come up with. She doesn't seem like a super big physical threat. I didn't really get any sense that she was a super strategist or any sort of mastermind. So I personally just felt, honestly, I think it was just the men being insecure about smart women.
I think
that's what it was.
I think that is a really big component. But I think the other part, and I don't think we saw a lot of it play out, but what I think is probably the most likely thing, and that what I kind of keep going back to, is at the end of the day, she was on the bottom of Siga. And so Siga had probably made up their mind, right? And said, if it's going to be one of us, let it be Mo. Charlie said that. If I'm not going to risk my game for Mo, I don't care. And so I would assume that, Charlie and maybe some of these other people, they plant seeds with others and be, oh, she's a threat. Oh, she's a mastermind. And so I think a lot of it was probably played up exaggerations fueled by Siga. That is the thing that I imagine is probably the root of it. And I think there's some stuff we see in the episode to justify that, but that would be my theory behind why it was so unanimous, and why, because that makes sense why Siga was also just so okay with it too, is because at the end of the day, she wasn't part of their core four, and that's all you need in Survivor is a core four. And so they're like, all right, cool, you can have her, but we're going to really convince you that she is really good. That way you don't get cute with it and vote out Charlie.
Yeah.
And Venus realized that nobody else would listen because there's not enough time, because it's only 27 days. In a 39-day game, I don't think this happens. But in a short game where there's not a lot of time for these sort of conversations and decisions and to learn all the dynamics, this is the sort of thing that I just think happens.
Yeah. All right. Well, anything else to add on episode 6, Cancel Christmas?
No, I don't think I have anything else on this one. I don't remember what the preview was for next episode other than just showing that it was split. I don't remember. So it couldn't have been too significant. But yeah, I'm interested to see what's going to happen, because there'll be 2 people that are safe and 2 people that are going home. So
Hunter, please.
That's going to be interesting. Moriah was on your team, so
she was
+1 for me. That's great news. So yeah, next week's going to be interesting, and we'll see if one of the big players, if they actually go home in the split vote, which is really the time to get them, or if they're going to make it through unscathed. That's really what I'm looking to see next week, because if they make it through unscathed, they could actually run the table to the end, I think, and stay very strong.
Yeah. Well, on that note, thank you so much for listening to this recap episode of Survivor episode 6. You can check us out wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. And check us out on social media, on Instagram and TikTok at Idle Talk Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we would really appreciate a rating and a review, as it helps our podcast grow. We appreciate you listening, and we hope you enjoyed.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.